Hook, midnight to 0:45. Have you ever looked out your bedroom window late at night, and felt like someone was standing in your backyard? Not because you actually saw them, but because something inside you told you that you weren't alone. I ignored that feeling for 13 nights. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., my motion light turned on again. I grabbed my phone and pointed the camera toward the backyard. Standing beneath the old oak tree, was a tall man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. When I lowered my phone, the backyard was empty. When I raised it again, he was still there. What happened over the next few nights forced me to leave my home forever. And even today, I never look into a backyard after 3:17 a.m. My name is Ethan. Last October, I moved into a quiet house on the edge of a small town. It was cheap, peaceful, and came with a huge backyard surrounded by an old wooden fence. The previous owner had passed away, and the family wanted to sell the house quickly. At first, everything felt normal. The neighbors were friendly. The nights were quiet. Too quiet. Every evening around 11:30 p.m., I would hear soft footsteps outside my bedroom window. Crunch. 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 I assumed it was a stray cat or raccoon. But every time I looked outside, nothing. One weekend I installed a motion sensor light facing the backyard. That night, the light switched on. I jumped out of bed and looked through the curtains. The yard was empty. No person. No animal. Nothing. The light stayed on for nearly a minute before turning off. I convinced myself it was a glitch. A few nights later I was scrolling through my phone when I accidentally opened the camera. Without thinking, I pointed it toward the backyard through the window. And that's when my heart stopped. Standing beside the old oak tree was a tall man. His face was impossible to see. He wasn't moving. I lowered my phone. The backyard was empty. I raised it again. The man was still there. Perfectly still. Watching me. I slammed the curtains shut and barely slept. The next morning I checked outside. No footprints. No signs anyone had been there. I even asked my next-door neighbor if someone ever entered the yard. She became strangely quiet. Then she asked, "You've seen him too?" I laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" She looked toward my backyard before whispering. "The last owner kept saying someone stood under that tree every night. Everyone thought he was losing his mind." She refused to say anything else. That night I decided to record the backyard. I placed my phone against the bedroom window and left it recording until sunrise. The next morning I watched the footage. For 6 hours. Nothing happened. Then at exactly 3:17 a.m. the camera glitched for 2 seconds. When the picture returned, the tall figure was standing only a few feet from my window. Completely motionless. He stayed there for almost 20 minutes. Then, without walking, he simply disappeared. My hands were shaking. I called the police. They searched the property. Nothing. No footprints. No evidence. One officer quietly asked if I'd been under stress lately. I realized they didn't believe me. A week passed. The footsteps became louder. Now they circled the entire house. Every single night. One evening my dog refused to go outside. He stood at the back door growling at something invisible. Then suddenly, he whimpered, backed away, and hid under the kitchen table. That was enough for me. I searched old newspaper archives online. Eventually I found an article from 1988. A local groundskeeper had disappeared behind the same house. His body was never found. the only witness claimed. A tall man had been standing beneath the oak tree before the disappearance. Everyone dismissed the witness. Reading that article made my blood run cold. I decided I was leaving. The moving truck was scheduled for Saturday morning. Friday night was my final night in the house. At exactly 3:17 a.m. the motion light came on again. I didn't look. Then came 3 slow knocks. On my bedroom window. Knock. 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 I forced myself to stay in bed. The knocking stopped. A few seconds later, I heard the back door slowly creak open downstairs. I grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the kitchen. The back door was wide open. Cold wind filled the room. The backyard looked darker than ever. Then I noticed something. Fresh muddy footprints. Leading from the yard. Into my kitchen. But there were no footprints leading back outside. Whatever entered was still inside the house. I searched every room. Closets. Bathrooms. Basement. Nothing. When sunrise arrived, the footprints had vanished. As if they'd never existed. I moved out that morning and never returned. Months later the house was sold again. One evening I searched the address online. The listing had been removed. But someone had uploaded a review. It simply said, "Beautiful house. Quiet neighborhood. Just one warning. Never look into the backyard after 3:17 a.m. I don't know who wrote it. But I hope they leave before they see what was waiting beneath the oak tree. Because some things don't haunt houses. They wait patiently for the next person to call them home." The end.